Morning, Hallie.
Hi, Hallie.
Good morning, everybody. Welcome to this City Council workshop for July 11th. I think we ought to get started right in, and I'll ask the City Manager for the responses to workshop questions.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. You have a letter in your packet dated July 11. There were several questions. I'll try to go through these fairly quickly. First question had to do, or first series of questions actually had to do with mobile home parks in the presentation on that. First question, are mobile homes required to have license plates? The answer is that no registration is required. Mobile homes have a title, like a car, but are taxed yearly based on the square footage of the unit. If they're moved, they have to get a tax clearance from the treasurer. But again, there's no registration that's required under law. How many mobile homes are there in Des Moines? There are about 20 mobile home parks in the city and about 2,200 spaces within those parks. Then there's additional 2 manufactured home parks with 258 spaces. That brings the total to 2,478 mobile homes in the city of Des Moines. Are mobile homes allowed to be parked in the front yard? The city of Des Moines doesn't have a prohibition specifically addressing RVs or that sort of thing, but parking motor vehicles on an unpaved surface in the front yard is not allowed according to city code. Now, with respect to the manufactured housing of the mobile home parks, so to speak, those are a matter of zoning. One of the things that you have asked us to do is to research zoning regulations as it deals with some of these older mobile home parks. And so as part of that process, we will be looking at zoning requirements that adhere there. But that's not as clear as the regulations on RV vehicles and similar things.
Well, let me ask you a question as you have addressed that. It seems to me that we wrote a regulation regarding new construction of mobile home parks that they have to meet certain regulations. Now, the old mobile home parks are grandfathered in under some other kind of a situation. Is there a possibility that we can bring them into compliance over a period of time?
There's a possibility, but it's difficult to do. You remember, Mayor, very well, we changed our mobile home regulations that made them more like a single family, the lot size and the requirements for new mobile home parks that might be built. It's more difficult to retroactively change them to those requirements, but we could look into it.
Anybody else have any quick questions? Thanks, Larry.
This is an item, as Larry said, that's coming back to you. We have a major effort that Community Development, Phil Delafield and his staff are working on. So this will be an ongoing issue in front of you, and I think we'll have a chance to look at this issue again, if I'm not mistaken. Shifting gears a little bit, community action agencies, your question had to do with requirements for the council appointed members of the tripartite board. And if you turn the page to page 2, look at the last paragraph, because that sort of summarizes. Yes, the short answer is yes, there are some regulations. They're not terribly tight, as I read it. If you had a 15-member board, which has been what's proposed, 5 members are appointed by the City Council. It can be anyone in the community representing your interest as you see them, so that's fairly loose. Another 5 members must be comprised of representatives from major groups. Those are identified as business, industry, labor, religious institutions, law enforcement, and education. And then the last 5 have to be members of low-income organizations. So that's the 15. There are regulations, but it does grant to you a fairly extensive latitude. You also ask if the business members had to be appointed by the Greater Des Moines Partnership. The short answer is no. There's no requirement to go through the partnership on the appointment of these individuals. So those are entirely within your purview. Streetscape guidelines. Are there any expectations on participation of the businesses located in the streetscape district? The answer is yes. That when a streetscape request is submitted, that has to include a petition of the adjoining property owners in favor of the streetscape project. That's to indicate that there's a level of interest and support on the part of the impacted property owners. In addition, the guidelines that we have do require that there be a SHMID, a self-supporting municipal improvement district, and the SHMID process, of course, requires a petition signed by at least 25% of the property owners. Next question, will staff be going out to streetscape groups with new policy and guidelines? Yes, but our intention is to come back to this council first to have you review those new guidelines on streetscapes before we go out to the public. We expect to have something back to you within 60 to 90 days on that.
Rick, am I reading this correctly that only 25% of business owners have to agree, and that creates a SMID for 100% of the business owners?
I think what it is, Mr. Moore, and I'll, if I see Roger Brown back there may know it in more detail, I think the 25% is simply the petition to get you in the door. Then I think there's more hearing process that has to go forward. So that doesn't necessarily mean that it happens. But maybe, Roger, you can give a more detailed response on it.
Mayor, members of the council, Roger Brown, Assistant City Attorney. It takes a petition by 25% of the property owners who collectively own at least 25% of the property to initiate a SMID. On the backside, there are provisions for a percentage of property owners to veto it, and I can't off the top of my head tell you what that percentage is, but I'm sure it's more than 25. So it takes a substantial support of the property owners and of the residents of that area, or property owners in a SMID to initiate it and to allow it to move forward.
Could you provide?
Though, Roger, all of the SMIDs that we've had in the city of Des Moines have had significant support. I'm thinking the 60 to 75% overall. I mean, I'm thinking of Island Park, and Sherman Hill had close to 100%. Ingersoll was probably 90-some%. And downtown, I know when we do the downtown SMIDs, those have been very high. They've been closer to 100% than they have to the 25.
I think there's been real strong support. I mean, you couldn't really get these things imposed unless you had strong support.
Yeah.
But the issue becomes when you set the rate and then having to make sure there's consent among the property owners. So there is some tension when you go about getting them approved. But there's been very strong support. Basically, the law requires strong support.
Yes, and there's I've worked on far more SMIDs than have actually made it through the process because there will be an active group in a neighborhood or in a business area that will try to initiate a SMID. The staff will work with them, but because of the thresholds for initiating a petition, and then also on the backside the thresholds that allow a veto, many of them have died on the vine.
Could you provide us with a copy of the guidelines that would provide for a veto?
I'll send you a memo that identifies the thresholds. There's a threshold to initiate, a threshold that triggers a supermajority vote. There's a threshold that vetoes it. I'll get that to you.
Thank you.
Thanks, Roger. Next question regarding streetscapes. Is there a difference between guidelines and standards? The streetscape guidelines are just that. They're not really etched in stone. They are guidelines to provide to the staff and council so you can make decisions, but they're not code requirements. The site plan ordinance and the landscape standards are a matter of city code regulation, and those are must-dos. There's no flexibility in those unless it's granted within the context of the ordinance. So there is a difference between guidelines and standards. License plate readers. Are there other communities using this technology? Within the country, there are other communities that are using this technology. There are none in Iowa. Is the intent to create immediate probable cause to pull someone over? The primary intent is to identify stolen vehicles, wanted persons associated with vehicles, parking, scofflaws, and to enhance follow-up investigations. The primary purpose is not to create probable cause, but it's important to note that if in the process there's a hit in the system, in other words, if the system finds somebody who's got a warrant out or there's some violation of law, then that would be the basis for a traffic stop, since probable cause in that case would have been determined. How does the technology function? I'm probably not the best person to try to answer this question, but essentially there's a short description there which describes how the system works. I'll let you read through that. What are the total number of vendors who sell this equipment? There's about 12 vendors that sell this equipment nationwide. How is the hot list created? There are basically two sources, or three. There's state and national databases that contain information on wanted people and stolen vehicles, and then second is a local database which includes parking violators that are entered into the system as well. So it's local, state, and federal. And then the last series of questions had to do with Startup City Des Moines. First question, what is the $200,000 annual budget? The estimated annual budget includes the operating costs for the incubator space, which includes lease, common area maintenance charges, utilities, internet connections, and salary for a full-time reception office manager. What are the benchmarks for the incubator? Benchmarks have not yet been established, but we've asked for them. In fact, I think it came up at this table when you talked about it before, so they will be included in any final funding agreement that comes before you. How many businesses will be located in the incubator? There's about 60 different companies that have been in the process. We expect that there'll be 15 to 20 that would be in the initial class. And the last question, when a business is ready to leave the incubator, will the city be able to require location in corporate limits? The short answer is no. We can't require somebody to be within the corporate limits, but it is certainly an appropriate question, and our intention would be using our economic development staff and working with the partnership and with the Startup City groups. We would do everything we can to try to encourage and promote the businesses that come out of that to locate within the city. Mr. Mayor, Councilmember, those are the answers and responses. We'd be happy to answer any questions.
Any other
about
questions?
that.
Anybody? If not, let's move right along. Our next item for discussion is the city safety report and policies.
Good morning, Mr. Mayor, Mr. City Manager, and members of the City Council. I'm James Wells with the City's Human Resources Department. Firstly, let me take the opportunity to say thank you for the opportunity to discuss employee safety at the council table. I think that employment programs like employee safety and employee wellness are definitely top-down programs, and it's very important and appropriate to discuss them here. This morning I'll provide some highlights, no lowlights, just the highlights of the city's 2010 injury record, and then we'll talk about injury prevention, and then some of the ongoing safety initiatives that the city undertakes. So in 2010, we did show some measured improvement in our safety numbers. We did record 351 injuries, and those injuries are medical treatment, restricted duty, and lost time injuries. Now that is down 73 injuries from 2009, and you should see some reduction in injuries each year because we're always trying to improve our safety record, but also because we had fewer employees in 2010, and we worked about 200,000 less hours. So one meaningful measurement that we look at in regards to our injury record is called the incidence report, and so that is a comparison of injuries to hours worked. Fortunately, in 2010, our incident rate improved as well. So it dropped along with the injuries from 23 to 20. And so what that tells you is for every 200,000 hours our employees worked, we recorded 20 injuries. We also look at severity rates because those are important because obviously they're more severe, there's more injury to the employee, and there's more cost in caring for that employee. Our severity rates did improve. The number of lost time injuries, those are the injuries that resulted in the employee being away from work, that fell substantially from 106 in 2009 to 65 in 2010. And that's a reflection also in another severity indicator that's called the lost workday rate. The number of lost days, that fell 40 points in 2010 as well. So those are, that's good news for 2010. We also,
James,
yeah.
What do you mean by points?
Well, it's that formula, it's that factor. So,
is it percentage points or?
Basically, yeah.
So we dropped 40% on lost days.
Well, it wouldn't be 40. The points would be a percentage of what we had last year. Last year, or a couple weeks ago, we sent out the 2010 annual safety report, and those rates are in this manual. Obviously, another big indicator of injury cost is the cost itself. You see a large number there, $4.5 million in injury cost incurred in 2010. Now, that is down $1.7 million from 2009. However, 2009 was a spike year. We did set a record of $6.2 million of injury cost in 2009.
What exactly makes up injury cost? Is it all the medical? Does it include the time lost on the job? Can you explain?
Yep, excellent question. It includes medical cost for, and this is, injury cost in 2010 is for those injuries that occurred in 2010 and all injuries that occurred prior to 2010. We're still paying on some claims that happened in 1980. But back to your question, injury cost includes the medical care, lost time. So if the employee was away from work, we have to pay their wages for that. It also includes what are called permanency payments. So the state of Iowa requires a
rating of the disability. So
exactly.
If it's 6% and we, okay.
Yep. And then industrial disability as well, which is another piece onto the disability. And again, those are broken out, those costs are broken out in the annual safety report. So as you see there, the cost of the injuries that occurred in 2010 were $1.2 million, and the balance of that, $3.2 million, was the cost incurred in 2010, but for injuries that occurred before 2010. Any more questions on that? The next slide tries to show the trend in both the incidence rate and our cost for the last 20 years. As you see, overall, the incidence rate has dropped over the 20 years, but the medical or the cost, injury cost, has not. That continues to increase. It has come down for the last 2 years. Some of the factors that are included in the injury cost are the injury severity. So more severe injury, the employee is going to be gone from work longer, and it's going to cost more to heal that employee. Wage increases also play into that, because wages are what determine how much we pay the employee when they're away from work, and it's used in determining how much we pay for those disability ratings. Medical inflation, you've heard us talk about that before regarding the group health insurance. It's no different with workers' comp. We have to care for the employee. And another big piece of that medical inflation is that we are required by law to pay for certain non-traditional type of work-related injuries. And I'll talk about that in a couple slides here as well. If we look at 2010 specifically, these are the types of injuries that make up the 351 injuries that occurred in 2010. And I'm sure your attention is drawn to the two taller bars, slips, trips, and falls, and strains. I think it's indicative of a couple different things. One is those are body mechanic type of injuries, and it also is indicative of the type of work that we do as city employees.
What does MC?
Good question. Not occupationally classified, and that is exactly, those are the types of injuries that I just mentioned, those non-traditional types of injuries that are covered in public safety. And we'll talk about that, and we'll talk about the cost impact that they have on our budget. Any other questions? When I say that's the type of work we do, city employees are just exposed to some very hazardous jobs. We have a police department, we have a fire department, so we have police officers that are fighting with criminals. They're in car chases. We have firefighters who are entering burning buildings. They're responding to medic calls where they're having to lift patients onto a gurney and load them into their ambulance. And then in addition to that, these are these non-traditional type of work comp cases. State law requires cities to cover heart disease, lung disease, and a plethora of cancers as work-related. Now, and I'm not here to debate whether that's right or wrong or the wisdom behind that, but there is a significant cost impact to that. Because really, if there are employees, for those things, we're paying those either way. We're going to pay them under the health plan, or we're going to pay them through workers' comp.
Is that for all employees?
Just for sworn personnel. And this Chapter 411 requires us to pay for those. So the difference between that is the cost of that care. If we were able to run some of these, and it would go for, say, a back injury or a back surgery or something like that, but these are very costly to care for. These injuries, like all injuries, go through the workers' comp network versus the group health. And there is a substantial difference in the discounts provided through group health and workers' comp. I know we have one claim right now that's reaching $900,000, and the net cost savings having that run through the workers' comp network is about 6%, whereas on the group health side, it would be probably 50%.
This is a very important point that James is making, and he's talking about how those high-cost procedures that relate to heart, lung, and cancer are costed out. Under the current law, an individual can seek treatment anywhere. You don't have to go through the insurance network to do it, so they don't get the discounts that our employees are afforded as part of, or frankly, were afforded as part of the insurance coverage we have, and it makes a huge difference in the pricing.
Yes,
One of the reasons the
difference.
costs are higher.
So can you expand upon that then, based upon the information we have, employees that choose not to go through our health care, that they can just go any place?
Actually,
It's not the employee who's
it's not the
at
employee.
fault.
Like our group health plan excludes any service provided for a work-related injury. So it's not that they choose, it simply cannot be processed through our
It's
group
more
health.
effort to say, isn't it, James, that the provider, the health provider, really can charge us the other rate. They're not required to go through the health insurance network. So it's really the provider, the health insurance provider, that's making that decision.
We do use EMC risk services to process our workers' comp payments, and they do have a network. Now, typically cardiologists, anesthesiologists, those types of physicians that are dealing with these types of illnesses are in that network. So even though EMC will process it through their network, they will pay the bills, but there just isn't a savings there that you would through, say, Wellmark's networks. And we've talked with, for years, we've talked with, when we were with Principal and now with Wellmark, can we process those claims through the group health, keep them separate, obviously, but, for the sake of getting the discounts. It's just something that I don't believe they're able to get in their provider networks. On the civilian side, our employees are also exposed to a lot of risk. We have public works, we have employees that are working in sewers, they're working in traffic zones. They're just dangerous situations that it's hard to control the risk. Now, in safety, one of the first steps in a safety program is to identify the hazards. Then after you've identified the hazards, you try to control it. So the number one thing to do to control the hazards, you just eliminate it. You don't do that. Now that's pretty tough for us, again, with public safety and the type of work we do. We can't just not do that work. It's what we're here for. If you can't do that, then you try to control it administratively or you engineer it out. If you can't do that, then you protect the employee with personal protective equipment, safety glasses, hard hats, safety shoes, respirators, and so on. And then you ultimately you train the employee. An example of engineering out a hazardous task is automated solid waste collection. Back in 2003, Public Works introduced the one-arm trucks. And being involved with work comp for, at least with the city, for the last 11, 12 years, those numbers were always alarming in solid waste, the injury costs. A lot of back injuries, shoulder injuries, from lifting the cans up into the back of the refuse truck. Ever since introducing the one-arm trucks, you can see the dramatic drop in injury costs since then. In 2010, we incurred approximately $430,000 less than we did when automated collection was first introduced, and over $500,000 from its spike in 2005. So these are programs that we always try to identify that keep us competitive. So what else are we doing around the city? Well, we do all of those things that you would expect us to do and that other companies do. We have a safety manual. We have numerous safety policies dealing with hazard identification, lockout, tagout, bloodborne pathogens, PPE, all of those things. Most departments, most operating departments also have safety committees. Something that is done in at least Public Works and the treatment plant are called incident review committees. And in these two departments, they have two of these committees, one that reviews automobile and equipment accidents, and then the other for injury, personal injury accidents or workplace injury accidents. These committees are peer review committees. They are made up of the workers in the department. What they do after an incident rises to a certain level, they will review the entire incident. We'll try to find out what was going on, what happened, what caused the injury, what was the root cause, how do we prevent it. But what else they do, which is very important, is they will make a determination, this group of peers, will make a determination of whether or not the incident was preventable. If not, then what they're trying to do is, again, find the root cause, avoid it from happening in the future. If it is determined to be preventable, the employee is held accountable, and they do go through a disciplinary process. We also do some recognition. There aren't a lot of incentives that we currently offer, which is fine, but something that I know Public Works and the treatment plant and the Parks Department, they do provide one day off for employees to go 5 years without an injury.
Jim, do we require a minimum number of hours that employees have training, safety training? 40 hours, 20 hours a year?
We do not have any requirement, hard and fast rule of the. Now, obviously, at the fire department and in some of those occupations, they'll have standards in regards to that, but nothing specific to the masses. Another thing, some other things that we have going currently. Kenan Miller, who is employee development specialist in the Human Resources Department, recently received his, I think it's called 511 certificate, and that allows him to train our employees, authorizes him to train our employees on any of the OSHA general industry topics, and that's what the city is mostly covered by, is the general industry. He's also certified or authorized to certify other employees in the OSHA 10-hour and OSHA 30-hour training. So that's a pretty significant step, and with that we hope to increase our number of training hours to our employees. Something Kenan is working on with Amelia in the communications office. They are going to publish driver safety programs and body mechanics programs that they can push out to the masses in video format.
James, if he's at a job site and feels though it's unsafe, will he have the ability to shut it down?
Kenan?
Yes.
That's something we haven't discussed, Councilman. You know, I have to assume that if Kenan or any employee believes they're working in an unsafe situation, that they have the ability to not do that work and contact their supervisor. So, with that, I'll just leave you, oh, I guess I have one more slide, sorry. Just three, I think, bullets here to leave you with is that safety is the #1 workplace priority. It has to be. It's management's responsibility to provide a safe workplace. It's the employee's responsibility to work safe and smart, and we're all accountable to the taxpayer to keep these costs low. Second bullet is we do work in hazardous areas, but I don't want you to have the impression that that's an excuse for not working safely. And then 3, I think safety and wellness are indistinguishable. I think the healthier employees are, the more fit they are, the safer they'll work. And to the last slide. This is our safety policy. And I'd just like to, again, thank you for your interest in safety. Any questions?
Good information. Thank you.
Thanks, James.
James, I really appreciate this report and the attitude we're taking towards safety, and I hope that we are taking every opportunity that we can to make jobs safer. As an example, in forestry, we have, I believe, 9 tree trimmers, 2 buckets. We've got a new bucket coming this fall, so they have 3. However, it's inherently safer to be in a bucket than it is to be climbing a tree, and I think we ought to be taking a look there to getting a bucket under each one of those tree trimmers, also be more efficient. And I think we've got many opportunities throughout the city. The solid waste one-armed trucks have really defined what we can do with mechanization, and I hope we continue to look for those opportunities.
And we will. Yeah.
All right, let's move along to the neighborhood selection for the revitalization program.
Thanks, Mayor and Council, Phil Delafield, Community Development Department. This morning we're going to give you a brief overview of the Neighborhood Revitalization Selection Program. It's time to choose new neighborhoods, and we'll give you a background, how we got to where we are, and then a quick overview of the process. Amber Lynch, a senior planner with our office, is here to present that to you today. So with that, I'll introduce Amber.
Thanks, Phil. Mr. Mayor, Mr. Clerk, members of the council, good morning. My name is Amber Lynch, and I am a neighborhood planner in the Community Development Department. As Phil mentioned, we are getting ready to select new neighborhoods into the revitalization program. Revitalization is about renewing our neighborhoods. It's about enhancing the quality of life for our residents and making the city of Des Moines a more attractive place in which to live. Our program is somewhat unique in that it was built on the foundation of being a partnership between the city and its neighborhood associations. For us, this program is about targeting resources to make maximum impact. We have 58 neighborhoods that have recognized associations here in Des Moines currently. And going forward, as we're in a time of more limited resources since the last time we went through this process, we're looking at ways that we can make more creative and efficient use of those resources. The selection process is a competitive application process. Because we have 58 neighborhoods and about half of those have gone through this program already, we can't work with the remaining 20 all at once with our limited staff. The last time we did selection was in 2006, and we chose 5 neighborhoods at that point in time. This time around, I think we're hoping to shorten up the time frame between selecting now in 2011 and the next time we offer this program. With that 5-year time period, what happened was we delayed the start with a few of those neighborhoods, and by the time we got around to working with them, leadership had changed over and there was a different vision for the neighborhood. So we're hoping this time we may need to select fewer neighborhoods in terms of numbers, but we're hoping to shorten that process so that we can do this again within maybe 3 years instead of 5. Again, a few changes for this year. We'll be opening up the process for all recognized neighborhoods to apply. So those are neighborhoods that have not gone through this program previously. For the first time this year as well, we are opening up the opportunity for charter neighborhoods to come back through the program. Charter neighborhoods have done a plan in the past, but we have come to the realization that many of those plans are now 10 to 20 years old. A lot of them were done throughout the early 90s with the beginnings of the program, and so this time we're offering them the opportunity to come back through to do an update to that plan, and I'll explain a little bit more what that process looks like in a few minutes. For all neighborhoods that apply, we're asking that they come to an application workshop that will be run by city staff so that we can walk them through the process and the requirements and make sure that they understand what the expectations are. In addition to that, we're asking them to fill out an application form that asks a number of questions about what they feel the areas of concern are in the neighborhood, as well as opportunities for improvement. And then in addition to filling out that questionnaire, they are required to do a presentation to the Neighborhood Revitalization Board, as well as a review committee made up of city staff. The final approval will go through the NRB, come before you, as well as the Polk County Board of Supervisors.
Have they been requested to do the presentation before the NRB and staff previously?
Yes.
Okay.
Yep, that has always been a requirement of the program and part of the application process. And usually it's just about a 10 to 15-minute presentation where they talk about their application. It's an opportunity for us to ask them some more questions and get a sense of what the neighborhood is thinking about. This year we're expecting to select 3 or 4 recognized neighborhoods depending on the applications that come in the door, and then hopefully 2 or 3 charter neighborhoods as well. And as I mentioned, we're hoping to do that planning work within the next 3 years if we can, so that we can open up another round and bring more neighborhoods through in a quicker time frame. A few other changes for this round of selection for that recognized neighborhood application. Last time we tried to get a sense of the capacity of the neighborhood organization, and we did that through asking questions about the neighborhood association on that application form. And we weren't sure that we really got a true sense of what that was. This process is much more successful when we have broad participation from the neighborhood, and when the neighborhood association really takes ownership of the process and takes on a strong leadership role. We expect them to really act as the champion of the plan throughout the process and then through implementation. And so to try and get a sense of that capacity and of their enthusiasm for the process, we're asking them to demonstrate the level of support that they can get on the front end of the process this time. So as part of their application, they'll be going out and trying to get residents engaged in the process to get a sense of residents that are supportive of the neighborhood association going through this process, and hopefully contacts for people that want to be participants in the process as well. We're also asking them to demonstrate stakeholder support. So if they have other stakeholders in their neighborhood, and that could be a church, it could be businesses, a business association, really any other stakeholders, we're asking the neighborhood association to go out to those potential partners and ask them for letters of support. Again, hoping that this will get them out into the neighborhood to spread the word that they're hoping to go through this process and to bring new partners into it so that we can be more successful throughout.
Schools would be an option as well, correct?
Yes, schools would be an option as well. really any potential partners they can identify in their neighborhood aside from the neighborhood association. It could even be their council member, so some of them may be asking you. Another change is that we are looking at accepting joint applications from multiple neighborhoods that may be adjacent to each other. This is an option that they can self-select, so we're not requiring that necessarily. But there are cases where it might make more sense if it's smaller neighborhoods that have similar issues or similar characteristics. It might make more sense for us to work with them all at once together, again, giving us a way to work with more neighborhoods and stretch our resources. So this is something that we'll be looking at through the application process. In addition to that, we're looking at trying to tailor the planning process so that it's best suited to an individual neighborhood's needs. We recognize that some neighborhoods maybe that aren't quite as healthy have a larger range of needs, and they need to go through that full comprehensive planning process with staff where we look at everything from housing to land use to parks to infrastructure, all of those range of things. There are neighborhoods, on the other hand, that really only have one or two pressing issues that they want to work with staff on and may not need to go through that 1 or 2 year planning process to do a full plan. So this is something we'll be looking at as applications come in the door and working with the neighborhood associations to try and tailor that process to suit their needs. For charter neighborhoods, again, these are neighborhoods that have gone through the program before, so they have an existing neighborhood plan that has been adopted by the city. We're asking that that plan be more than 10 years old. That is the majority of our charter neighborhoods. I think there are only 2 who have done their plan since 2001. We're also looking at this part of the program as being a pilot partnership with Iowa State University. We have tentatively contracted with a graduate studio class. These are master's students in planning, so they're working towards the same degree that our staff has. But looking at our staff working with that studio class to work with charter neighborhoods to do these plan updates. Again, that allows our staff to be able to oversee and manage the process. We'll still participate in it, but it takes some of the work off our plate so that we can focus our attention on the recognized neighborhoods. We're looking at this being a shortened, more intensive process, something that can be accomplished within the semester time frame. It would still involve a series of public input meetings, but be led by those student groups. As this application process, rather than all of the requirements we're asking the recognized neighborhoods to fulfill, the charter neighborhoods need to submit a letter of interest, and we have a series of questions for them to respond to as well.
Amber, how do you determine if a plan has been completed or not?
Well, for the charter neighborhoods, they all have plans that were adopted by the city on a certain date. So we have records of all of those plans. Are you asking how, through this process, we know if a plan has been completed or not?
Let's, for instance, say part of the plan was to have sidewalks throughout the neighborhood. So therefore, the plan wouldn't be complete until all the sidewalks are in.
Well, the way that we look at that is we do periodic evaluations. So after a certain length of time has passed, and really it varies by neighborhood, we look back at the plan and try to assess whether or not the majority of the goals have been completed. Now, we can't always accomplish every goal that is set out in the neighborhood plan. There may be a variety of reasons for that. It could be financial reasons. Either something was put in the plan that was just found to be not financially feasible, or it may be other reasons. I believe one of the past plans had a goal to bury all the power lines in the neighborhood. And well, we found that, especially in a neighborhood-specific setting, that's really not a feasible goal to attain. So we chartered that neighborhood even though that goal had not been accomplished. Does that answer your question, Mr. Moore?
Partly.
Okay.
I've argued the issue about power lines, but that's a good goal and it should be happening, but I wouldn't speak to that.
Sure. this is the timeline that we're looking at. We're starting pretty much right away. So this week, a letter will be going out to all the neighborhoods, promoting those application workshops that we'll hold later this month. The application period will open up in August and go through mid-September. And then we'll take a few weeks to review those applications, go through the presentations to the NRB and the review committee in October, and look at making final decisions throughout the month of November. We're hoping that we can begin those meetings with at least some of the neighborhoods, maybe not all at once, depending on how many we get in the door, but hopefully at least some of those in January.
Amber, going back, when we expect to select 3 to 4 recognized neighborhoods, and I haven't heard you mention anything about this during your comments.
Sure.
On the designation of the neighborhoods, the positive, the less, the distressed neighborhood, I guess. What are the titles, and are we looking specifically at having some positive, some distressed neighborhoods?
Sure. Well, I think what you're referring to is last time our staff looks at some indicators of neighborhood health, and the neighborhoods have been classified as either stable, transitional, or distressed based on those indicators. We are working on that analysis again right now, so we will have those classifications. Last time, we did not allow distressed neighborhoods to apply for the program because we were already working in a distressed neighborhood and really needed resources to continue going to the work in Kid and then in Drake. This year, we're opening it up to all of the recognized neighborhoods, so there are no limitations based on their classification.
Okay.
It may be something that we look at once we get the applications in the door. Because we do have limited dollars, and many of the CDBG funding is going towards the Drake neighborhood and implementing that plan right now. If we get several neighborhoods that have significant housing needs, we may only be able to select one just based on our current resources.
And the dollars, you've made reference a couple of times to limited dollars compared to what we've had previously. Do we know what that number is?
I don't know if Chris knows that number. I know we're looking at additional cuts in CDBG next year, so I'm not sure exactly where we're at for next year. In fact, that's on this slide as well. Just a few final thoughts before I finish up here. The plans do require significant time and effort from the residents and stakeholders that get involved. The process ranges anywhere from a year to 2 years of monthly planning committee meetings. So it really is a lot of time that those volunteers put in to put these things together. We are much more successful when there's broad participation from the neighborhood, so that those plans really represent the range of interests that there are in a neighborhood. The other thing that going through this planning process creates is an expectation that something will then happen in the neighborhood. And to do that, it does require financial resources. We look at and continue to look at partners that we can bring into this process, nonprofit agencies, for-profit developers, really anybody that has an interest in improving these neighborhoods. We try to get to work with us on implementing these plans. But as we look at additional cuts in CDBG and home funding, we're going to be looking elsewhere for dollars to put the implementation into place. So, with that, these are just the dates and times of the application workshops, in case any of you get questions about them or would like to attend. I think that's all the information that I have for you this morning, so I'll take any questions, and thank you.
Just a quick question. Can you provide us a list, maybe later in the week, of the neighborhoods that are charter neighborhoods, as opposed to those that are designated but never have been part of the plan?
Yes.
Part of the program?
Absolutely.
Okay.
Amber,
And-
on page 2, is that the list there?
And the map on, yes, on
Okay.
page 2.
I did notice you're missing Riverwoods, so
Oh, this must be an old map then.
it's an old map. You might
I
want.
apologize.
I noticed things like that.
Thank you for catching that.
Amber, you stated there were 58 recognized neighborhoods. Does this include the 2 that are being considered for for derecognition, so actually there's probably 56.
Yes, yes. And what Mr. Moore is referring to is an item that went before the NRB last week. As part of our neighborhood recognition policy, we require neighborhood associations to fill out an annual survey. And we have 2 neighborhoods, Arbor Peaks and Waveland Woods, that have not returned this survey for 2 years now. And we've been unsuccessful at contacting the neighborhood associations. And so this will actually come before council at the next meeting on the 25th. But one of the discussions we had last week was moving forward with de-recognizing these neighborhood associations if, in fact, they are no longer active. So I sent out a letter on Friday asking them to please respond and let us know immediately if you are still active and would like to remain recognized.
Can you provide a copy of the letter to me?
Sure.
Thank you.
Absolutely.
Amber, just for the benefit of the mayor and council members, for those council members who want to see firsthand this process unfold, I'm sure they're welcome to attend any of these sessions and
Yes.
be there and be part of it and add their 2 cents to the process.
Yes.
And then it will come back to this table before there's a final decision made, correct?
Yes.
Right.
Yes.
Mr. Mayor, Councilman, I just wanted to add one other comment about this is really a wonderful program, and it's been honed over the years into something that's remarkably effective, and this council ought to really feel proud about the work it's doing in the neighborhoods. It's making a real discernible difference. You drive around, you look at the city, and you see the impacts of this program. It's really quite remarkable, the impact that it's had over time. So congratulations to the staff. I know there's a lot of staff people involved in it, a lot of departments involved in it, but it's really quite a good program. We are being impacted by some of the things like the reductions in block grant funding that impacts both our capability to do planning work as well as the implementation, but we're going to do our best to keep funding that program, of course, with council's leadership and approval of those funding items. But it is a very important program, and in my view, we've got to find ways to continue to fund it at a level that makes it effective.
Anybody else?
Thank you.
Thank you. So you're going to add Riverwoods, that'll make 59, then we're going to take the 2 off that he wants to take off, then we'll be down to 57. Is that where we're going to?
Well, Riverwood still is 58. I just have an old map on here, so.
Okay. Thanks, Amber. We were going to move into a discussion about tax abatement. We have a consultant in the audience, and because of the sort of lateness of the first 2 presentations, I think if everybody's okay with it, why don't we move to the Municipal Service Park Master Plan update, and then if we have time, we'll come back to the residential tax abatement. Okay?
Mayor and Council, Larry Hulse, City Manager's Office, and I'll try to go through this. Many of you have seen the highlights of this. This is a continuation of a discussion you had a few months ago about the service center. So this is an update of that work and where we're at as far as site planning. I will introduce John Wellenkamp and Roger Thompson that are here. They've done a lot of the programming work, what really works as far as putting uses together. Bill Anderson is here, Brett Douglas, and last but not least, Mark Land, who has been very busy looking at drainage and engineering issues, site carrying capacity issues on the project. You'll remember the site we're looking at 14th, more or less at Maury, Scott. That's the area we use for our study area. The objectives of the plan you remember very well, I'm sure, looking at a sustainable opportunity where we can build something that will have sustainability aspects built into it. Operational improvements, better service to the citizens is paramount. And for the city, having a cohesive vision and plan for the entire organization. This does not have to be implemented day one. In fact, that's the way we plan this. But to have a plan of where services ought to locate, field services ought to locate in a unified fashion is really important to the city. And lastly, but certainly maybe more importantly, the opportunity to revitalize this part of the city. This type of a project can really put a different face on an area that has been neglected for a number of years. The context you know very well. On the left is the existing public works facility. That's something that's not needed to move right away, but will sooner or later as market conditions change in the East Village Market District area. But most immediate is on the right of the slide, the existing service yards that are out near Kemen. They get really need to be moved, and some of them have moved already for the Southeast Connector project, as well as Kemen's expansion plans. This shows the market area near downtown, the existing facilities for mostly public works. That real estate will be more impressive to developers. In fact, we've had inquiries already, and it's important to have a plan on how do you relocate if an opportunity comes up. The second area that's most immediate is, again, the area out near Kemen. You can see in purple the Southeast Connector path that goes right through that yard. That makes that an immediate need, our first priority, and that's what we're concentrating most of the discussion on. This shows in detail that first priority, the immediate need, the different uses that are there. Some have been relocated. Again, we had an agreement with Kemen to accommodate their expansions, and we've met those targets so far. This does show the Kemen expansion plans and how they would be utilizing some of that area. In the top right corner is the area that we have now that would become part of Kemen's project in the future. This is a slide you've seen many times. It shows some of the different locations we have these services at, multiple locations. And there's just a savings in getting them all into one place. People can work together when they're in the same place, let alone the travel distance between the different facilities we have. And again, back to our considerations, and these were our primary variables that we looked at, but number 1 and number 2, site size and central locations, those were really top in our selection list. Need enough size to make this project work, and for the services to work day in, day out, it needs to be centrally located. This shows the ownership in the area. You know the area very well. The Southeast Connector is the white line. Carroll Auto is the brighter yellow. That's where we're really looking, is in that area. At first we thought we would be down lower on the slide, the blue area, the city-owned property. That's the landfill, and what we found through investigations, and this kept our consultants busy, was looking at, can we really use that area? And the landfill ended up being larger, takes up more space than we thought, as well as the carrying capacity to have buildings and uses on it were just a problem that caused us to move it from that location northerly. This is the just kind of a general contextual slide. There's been a lot of discussion about flood and drainage concerns, and this area will be protected. It is protected by the existing levee, the same as the downtown, but it will be important that the full larger scale protection for the downtown be completed, and the council's been very much on track with that issue because the levee protects not only City Hall and the buildings that we're in now, but also the site we're looking at, as well as the existing public works yard. So that project is very important. One of the things we've asked the consultants to do is look at how the building would be constructed, because there are ways to build that allow the facility to recover if there would be a flooding problem more quickly, as well as updating our plans, relocation plans, how we'll operate in case of a problem at this location. But quite frankly, the drainage concern, local drainage concerns day in, day out when we have heavy rains is a big concern, and one that we've spent quite a bit of time with this project looking at, and I'll come back to that in a second. The immediate needs, first priority, the Kemen area, the Southeast Connector area, is about 84,000 square feet. A number of uses from parks, engineering, and possibly others. I will say that the employees have worked very hard on this project, not just the team that's been working with the manager's office on this, but all the employees, because what the consultants have done is gone and talked to them. How do they do their work? Where is their equipment? What are the needs that they see? And that's helped us to identify the square footage needs for this project. The second part of this project is kind of an ultimate, and that would be a facility around 244,000 square feet, the second priority. And what has been nice about our consultant team is they've been able to look at our first priority needs, the common area, the Southeast Connector area, and then look at our other field functions and figure out the best way to mesh those so that someday you'll have all your facilities in one place, all those field uses in one place. It'd be a great customer service advantage for our citizens to have all those uses in one place instead of scattered throughout the city. These are some slides just so you can get some sense. On the bottom is our existing facilities. To the top are some of the slides of new facilities in Iowa and elsewhere. Basically, when you build new, you can plan exactly how to locate things so that they're the most efficient and add to productivity. The costs for the project. One of the things that's been most interesting to us is that productivity. What are the gains from locating from several old sites that we've made fit over the years to one facility that is built for the uses that we intend? And I'll ask John to comment on this. You've talked to John on the phone before, you'll get to meet him. But he's looked at, in the first priority, the first part we're doing, the savings. There's a one-time savings, and that's not including real estate that we would sell. It's not including real estate we would sell, but of around $420,000. If we do the full project, you can see the number really goes up, the savings you can gain by having all the uses in one place and arranged in a logical fashion. John, you want to just talk about that? John is really our expert in this, and he's had years of experience. One of the things he mentioned to me was these were conservative, and I asked him what that meant. So, John?
Yeah, good morning, Council. Yeah, that's a very important piece here. These are actually the bare minimum advantages we see for implementing a facility like this, whether it's a smaller phase from phase 1 to phase 2. The goal is we didn't want to overestimate what we'd see in savings. But track record, going back 20 years from when I've started doing this, we're very conservative in showing these numbers. We're very confident that these numbers could even double time you get into the long-range facility.
One of the most interesting parts of this, because you start asking, how do you get these savings from what we have now? Building's a building, but you can understand being in different locations and travel time and those issues. But one of the most interesting ones to me was we have a lot of equipment. Every council meeting you're looking at equipment purchases. We can extend the life of vehicles and equipment by putting them in the correct type of shelter. And that's something we don't do now that we could do with this project. This is the site plan we're looking at now. Again, I mentioned that we're moving north. This is right to the south of the Southeast Connector alignment. This is the priority one, the Kemen area, Southeast Connector area. It's on the south is Scott. We would face it to the Southeast Connector. Again, we're looking at the economic development potential of doing a first-class presentation of the building to the public at that point.
And the Carroll company, the Carroll landowner, they are what?
They are the landowner in that priority one, as well as you can see in the aerial. They're affected by the Southeast Connector.
Okay.
So they will need to be relocated in this project.
We can move that.
If we do the whole project, priority one and priority two, and putting the uses together, again, the second phase is a much larger phase. But you can see how we can start to really affect how that part of the city looks and actually open up new opportunities along 14th, 15th, the Southeast Connector, set the right tone for industrial development, new development in this area.
Larry, have we notified those property owners that we're interested in buying them out?
We need to notify them as specified in state statutes for the tools we're going to use. The short answer is yes.
They have been communicated with?
Yes.
Okay.
And will we as the city be working with them obviously as to a new location?
Yes.
Do we have any ideas?
Yes.
Okay.
But that's something that's really a business decision and what will meet their needs, and we'll need to get into that. If you authorize this plan, first of all, adopting the plan would have a blueprint for the future. But then if you want to move into the next phases, phase one, which we would suggest you need to, because that's an immediate concern, then we start having more serious discussions of what their needs are and accommodating them. This slide I wanted to show because in the red are the areas that could be actually pretty darn good redevelopment opportunities. A lot of property could gain by this project. There's an area that we show in the kind of purplish, pinkish to the south. That's the landfill area. And we're not saying that could not be used for something, and it might be used for some relocation opportunities. That's another part of this project you asked us to do, and we did the first phase, and we're going to launch a second phase, is working with other entities, the state, the county, the school district. We've talked to Mid-American, in fact, on our location plans. As those entities see this as a real project, they're interested in tracking and working with us, and some of the lands around here might be attractive for their uses as we co-locate. This is a slide of some examples, again, looking at efficiencies and productivity gains that can be made. One of the keys is designing a facility that can be flexible so that as we need to make changes or the state of the art of whatever we do changes, the space can accommodate those changes, and the consultants have worked hard to keep that flexibility part of the project. There are several slides about sustainability. When you build something, that's when you can really look at these issues. And one of the first things we're doing that would be a sustainable practice is reusing an area that is not being used very well right now environmentally. So we're already ahead just in our site selection on some of these issues, but there are many things that we can look at and would look at, and we would try to attain the highest level of sustainability, LEED, whatever we choose for a measurement as we could with this project. The architecture, again, when you're building, you can do things that we've not been able to do when we occupy hand-me-down buildings, which has been the case in the past. These are the areas, general areas we would look at for sustainability: the siting, water efficiencies, energy, indoor environmental quality. All of them can lead to a safer place for our employees, and actually a location that's more cost-effective for us to maintain over the years. Construction costs for Phase 1, Priority 1, is about $18 million. Much of that is already in your capital improvement program. It's very doable, and it does meet our obligations for the Kemen agreement, as well as get out of the way of the Southeast Connector, which we are trying to speed along. This is a calendar of things that might happen in the future, and the most important from our perspective is on the 25th, we had asked the council to take action. First of all, adopting the plan. It's good to have a plan of where you want to go with these facilities. We haven't always had that in the past and made decisions here, there, whatever is available. So the next part of it is land acquisition, and authorizing us to move forward on land acquisition, completing the master plan. I'm sure you'll have some comments. Get this all finished up. We want to do the next level of outreach to the other agencies that are interested. The school district has been very interested in some of their fleet uses. And then move into design. And we'll need to make some decisions. Do we build this in the conventional manner, or do we do some other type of acquisition of the building? But we need to design the facility itself. This project was scoping and getting a range of size, cost, and possibilities, and I think we've accomplished that. But between now and the 25th, if you have any questions, please direct them to us, and we'll answer them quickly.
Larry, back on that 18.5 that you said was the cost of the project?
Yes.
Yeah. On it, the asterisk down there excludes interim facility costs. Do we have any idea as to what those costs will be?
We've already spent those costs. That was the Des Moines asphalt, and maybe somebody can remember how much it was. We need to move a part of Public Works out for Kemen's first phase of their changes, and we need to do that real quickly. And it was kind of the snow operations where we mix the salt, and that has been moved so that they can move into their first phase. There's a timing between Kemen. They do different parts with our property and what we do, and that was the first piece, and we had to move on that quicker than this project. Ryan?
Larry, I want to thank you, community development staff, everybody that's worked on this, the city manager. I think this is a great proposal. It really, for me, in my ward, and I'm not trying to say anything else other than it kills basically 3 birds with 1 stone. You're helping Kemen expand. That has to move over there with Public Works. You're revitalizing that area, which really needs it. It's a huge mess down there. And we're creating a plan that can help in the market district. If somebody comes and says, you know, we want the land that Public Works is on, now we have a plan to move them out in a timely fashion. And I really think this is a great proposal, and I look forward to supporting it all the way through the process.
And Councilman, I would be remiss if I took any credit for this. All the credit goes to, I think every department has spent Tuesday mornings wrestling with this issue.
I didn't mean to limit the department.
And everybody has worked hard on it, and I think what we find most fascinating, the points you point out are very important, but maybe more important is the operational efficiencies and productivity gains we can gain by having all of our a centralized location.
I think there's great opportunity for phase 2 as well, and I think this is a good first start, but I really look forward to supporting this throughout the process.
Mr. Coleman?
I agree with about everything that you're saying, Brian. All the important parts I agree with. The one thing that I'd like to see us continue to work on is the speed at which we can implement it. And I really worry that, you know, based on what we've seen with the other major development downtown, is we may not have the window to deliver, let's say, the Public Works land at Southeast 6th, you know, in the new market area, because it will still take us a long time, and we'll still have to have a lot of funding issues before us. So, you know, my hope would be that between now and the 25th, staff think a little bit about, if we directed them to accelerate the time frame, how might that look like? I'm not saying we vote on it today, but I'd at least like some thoughts about that, because I think the best opportunity is trying to do this as quickly as possible. You know, every generation of city leaders have to invest in infrastructure when, you know, they own the city infrastructure. And we're doing a lot of that right now with a new police station and a new fire station and a new fire training facility. We did the libraries in the last decade. But I think we really have to be committed to this because I think the real opportunity will be related to how quickly we can do it.
In addition to, and when we met the last time, I wanted to talk about this too, Chris, I think we need to add into this plan and make sure you guys understand that in addition to Public Works down in the East Village Market District, there's also that salvage yard down there that we need to address. And if we're moving Carroll, if we're helping Carroll, we also need to move the folks down in the Market District, expeditiously move out of that area, because you know what I'm talking about, right next to Public Works. And, you know, I don't know where you guys are thinking, but make sure you include the Market District. Or the salvage yard in the Market District.
Skip?
I couldn't agree more with Brian. We've already had the chair of the Historic East Village Neighborhood Association here saying the sooner the better, moving out fleet maintenance and Public Works. And I believe this council and the city staff will hear more and more about that. And as commercial interests start looking in that area, they're going to want us to expedite it and move out. So I think that phase 2 is extremely important for an accelerated timeline.
And finally, any questions you have between now and the 25th, let me know. We'll make those consultants that we're paying answer and do their job and get answers to you very quickly. But we've been very pleased with their professional work and the guidance they've given us. Many iterations to get to this plan, and we think it looks real good.
Ellie, Bob, anybody else? Thank you.
Excellent.
Mr. Manager, what are the prospects of having a quick presentation on the tax abatement
I think we can do
issue?
a very quick job on the tax abatement.
Let's get started.
Phil, as you're coming up, given the limited time, I'd make sure that you focus on the last 2 pages that talk about the timing and going forward on this, so the council
Absolutely.
understands schedule going forward.
Thank you, Mr. City Manager. Mayor and Council, Phil Delafield, Community Development Department once again. An overview for you today on the residential tax abatement program. As you are aware, this is up for your consideration at the end of the year. This workshop is a preview of a public session that we intend to deliver to elicit public comment that will help us get the information we need to bring back to you to help you make the decisions that are necessary. So this program that you see today is geared as a public presentation that we intend to deliver on August 9th in a public session. So again, in context, this is more for public use, and if you have questions about it, I'd like to give you the opportunity to ask those questions. So I won't read each of the slides, but we intend to give an overview of the presentation to you. You need to reapprove the program if it's to continue. We intend to explain what tax abatement is and how have we used it and what options are available to the city. We will explain what the residential tax abatement program consists of, the rehabilitation of new and existing houses, the property tax abatement is available for increased valuation, and the revitalization that can occur with a successful program. The program, how it works, we'll give an overview to the public and explain it to them, present the opportunity for the public to ask questions. We will explain the various options that we currently have, the 5-year 100%, the 10-year 100% in targeted areas, and the 10-year 115% in the citywide improvements if it's less than $20,000 in value. This is our map of the current tax abatement areas. We will present this at the public meeting. And the number of tax abatement that we've processed from 2004 through 2010. You see in the yellow the rehab, and in the sort of the blue is the new construction. We have an overview of the applications that we've had. There were nearly 400 tax abatement applications for new homes. We had applications for new construction that traditionally outnumbered the applications for rehab and additions to existing homes. And just as a reflection of the market, we have seen a decrease. Average project values, we'll give an overview of those as well. And these are the rehab, similar numbers. Tax abatement physical trends, new construction is about 93% of the $84 million in residential abatement value granted in Des Moines. That's 2009, 2010 numbers. The rehab value is about 7% of the total of $84 million, and the number of projects has decreased. The average value of new construction has also decreased, and the average value of the rehab projects has also decreased. Metro City tax abatement, this is an overview of where we are in the metropolitan area. We're the only one with 100% 5-year, 10-year residential tax abatement. There are other communities as well that have it. Most use a declining percentage over the abatement period, and in some cities they cap it at $75,000. It's important to note that Des Moines has the second lowest property taxes of metro cities surveyed over the 20-year period, and we give a screen that illustrates those points. New home starts, we've averaged 9.8% of the single-family home starts in the metro. We ranked second in the number of new metro area home starts. We've averaged 23% of the multifamily housing starts metro-wide, and unfortunately, new single-family home starts have decreased in almost nearly in half since the pre-recession levels. This is a graph that gives you an indicator of where the construction has been occurring. Ankeny has been the boomtown now for some time. You can see that we are in the sort of lime green colored area there. So an overview of single family and townhome. Our population growth, we grew about 3%. The goal, I'm sorry, the 2002 City Council goal, grow population downtown by 3%, attract 6,000. Did we make it? 2.4%, 198 to 203,000 for the overall city. Downtown housing units increased by 1,400 units to about 4,400 total downtown dwelling units. And nearly all of the downtown owner-occupied units have received the 10-year tax abatement.
And so that was as of the end of 2010, and we've got quite a few new projects coming online in 2011.
Yes.
So
Yes. Okay. So the trend towards downtown growth is still continuing. These are the options that we'll present to you, and we will try for public comment on these items. Keep tax abatement as it is, eliminate tax abatement, change the 5-year 100% to a graduated scale, cap the maximum value, eliminate the 10-year targeted, or amend the 10-year targeted, or eliminate the rehab abatement. These are all options for you to consider.
Could I ask that we have some discussion about one other option? And I've brought this up before, but we haven't been able to figure out how to do it, and I know it has a price tag to it, so I'm sensitive to that. But that would be on seniors. One of the comments I continue to get are seniors that are not able to stay in their homes because their property taxes are now higher than what their house payment used to be. And I understand that. I mean, we've done a good job on property taxes, but it's just, they've been there for 20, 30, 40 years. Is there some way that we could look at utilizing the census data that we could figure out some type of a way to be supportive of them?
Mrs. Hensley, we'll work with legal on it and get you a written response on it. You have brought this up before, and I think we've researched it, but I'll do a definitive review with legal in terms of what we're allowed to do, what discretions the council has under the law.
And I know there'd be some issues with the state, and what the code would allow us to do. But
there are some code issues, but I think that's the starting point, and then we'll report that back to you.
Yes.
And maybe even look around the country and see if there's any other areas that are actually doing that, because I think there are.
I think there are, and that is, it's the feeling, it's no different than when we provide economic development assistance to new businesses to move in. There's a feeling even with some businesses that have been here and been doing, been a major part of the community that, well, what are we doing to assist them? And I think this is another piece of it, particularly with our population aging in the city of Des Moines. It's more important than ever.
Very good. We'll be happy to look at it and report back.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Phil, on this chart on page 14, that's basically taken in consideration it was a newly built home in the last 20 years, correct?
On the property taxes?
This one here?
No, the one area tax rates.
That one.
Yeah.
That one.
Yes, that's correct.
Okay. Thank you.
Phil, I have a question.
Yes.
Oh, does that Phil? As far as the abatement on commercial and what we do to encourage, Skip and I just dealt with a situation on Southeast 14th Street that we've talked to you about. When we're looking at encouraging some of this redevelopment in these areas with the commercial process, what's the rule on that now, and when is that up?
It's the same time. We have a number of programs that are targeting commercial. This is just targeting residential.
Can we maybe at some point take a look at the commercial stuff and what the options are there? And the reason I say that is we've got a lot of areas.
We have a lot of plans.
And we've got really a real need out there to maybe work on this.
Mr. Meyer and council members, it's a great point that you raise, and I think the staff will agree that what you've got out there is very much a patchwork quilt with some areas that get it and some that don't, and sometimes the rationale for those who get it and those who don't isn't real clear. And we've struggled with this, and it's just sort of one of those things that's evolved over a period of many years, and it does require a review. So we will do that and get back to you.
Anything else?
Just an overview of the next steps. We're going to collect the citizen stakeholder input. We'll present that information to you in the fall of 2011, and then you will be making a decision by December 31st of 2011.
If I could just mention one last thing, Mr. Mayor and council members, and that is that you have some downtown projects where 10-year tax abatement is going to be necessary. In fact, I think there's a project or two on your agenda tonight. And your decision a couple of years ago was to change that schedule to go to a 5-year and get rid of the 10-year. What we're looking at now is suggesting to you of going back to that 10-year, and you've got a project on this evening. So that's one of the aspects of this particular decision that may be in front of you a little bit sooner in the context of these very specific projects that are coming back.
And I agree with that. And I think the other thing on the timeline, Phil, if we could move that up, because I know in working with developers right now, they're trying to figure out, they've got their pipeline done for 11. they're now focusing on 2012, and if we as a city are going to be making changes in the tax abatement, they need to be aware of that. So I think the sooner, if there's any wiggle room in here, that we could move that up, because I think previously we've done it quite a bit earlier.
I understand your point very well, and we will look at that and see how quickly we can move the schedule along on that. It's a good point.
That's all we have.
Good information, thank you.
Thank you very much.
I think as a council, I recall in the past, didn't the council have a committee of the council that looked at tax abatement issues?
Mm-hmm.
With developers.
And also with staff? I think maybe it would make some sense that we think about anybody that would like to serve on a committee like that, to bring all these issues together so that when we have our next presentation, everything is out on the table that needs to be discussed.
Happy to work with you in that fashion.
Yeah, that would be great. That would be really helpful, I think, and if, Mayor, if you could work with council to identify.
Sure.
I'd like to have two groups, one that works with commercial. I'd like to be on that one, and then one that works on the residential.
You don't want to work on residential?
Whatever you guys come up with is fine with me.
Okay. Anybody have any quick questions or comments? Phil, thank you very much. Let's see if there's any public comment. Anybody in the audience like to make comment regarding any of the items that were discussed at our workshop today? Seeing none, thank you all for coming. We are now adjourned.
Yeah. Sure. It should be so close.
If you're going to go down.